Hey, everybody. Hey, it's Rick
Man.
Wallace with Greg Kellogg and Tipp Major.
What's
We
up?
host the Sports Affiliation Thursday Checkdown. Our focus is on helping you be more successful in your fantasy football leagues and have fun, because if it isn't fun,
Then why do it?
that's
become our
correct.
moniker. That we got to keep rolling with that. But you know what, fellas, and our audience out there, I'll tell you what. We got a special guest, but Greg, you got something to say. I'm just so excited. I can't wait to talk about this guy.
We want you to tell people where they can find your work and then introduce our guests.
So you can find me at Rotoballer, and you can also find me with this great organization, the Sports Affiliation. And this week, I'm going to say you can also find me with Football Guys. And I have the pleasure, the absolute pleasure tonight to bring on Dave Kluge. Dave Kluge is a superstar, guys. This guy is one of the favorites on the site footballguys.com. And I got to tell you right now, when I first joined with the team, Dave was one of the first people that I spoke to. Genuine guy, smart. I kind of, it's funny. I kind of I don't drink wine, but you got that real fancy sommelier dude who hands you all of the fine wines. Dave is handing everybody all of this fine wine lists of opinions and insight on footballguys.com, guys. He is a sommelier of fantasy football. He's
you got to get him to step up his game, Tip.
You
got to get him to step up his game. He needs a light in front of his face so we can see the face.
Hey, guys, look
a little bit.
And
there you go.
I'm gonna finish. This dude is one hell of a football guy. So Dave Kluge.
You're far too kind. Thank you, Tipp. Yeah, we the first time we met was by pure happenstance. We were both traveling to Canton, Ohio.
Yes.
We were on the same connecting flight, and you were walking down the aisle, and we got to meet after having done some shows together. So just a pleasure to do a show together anytime we get a chance to talk. And Greg, Rich, nice to I've met you, Greg, also in Canton. Rich, I think this is our first time meeting, but
no, we didn't get a chance to meet in Canton this year, so I'm thrilled. And I was also hoping you would have brought pie. As I understand it,
yeah. So, hey guys,
company that
was supposed to ask a question about his process before I ask my question. Dave, what's your process for evaluating running backs?
I want to start by looking at the numbers. I think that gives me the guys that I want to look at. I want to see the guys that are compiling stats, because I think that's important. And if you're not compiling stats in college, you're probably not going to in the NFL either. So my process always starts with the numbers, overall, just rushing, receiving, that sort of stuff. Then I dive a little bit into the efficiency. And then once I have my list of players that I want to look for, this is kind of a lot of people won't admit this, but I start with the highlights. I want to see what players can do well. Are you a special mover? Can you do things that are going to translate to the NFL? Once I kind of look at the guys that I think have the talent to make it to the NFL, that's when I dive into the game film and start looking for consistency, start looking for some of the warts in their game that could end up being an issue in the NFL. So kind of start with the overall numbers, then dive into the efficiency, then start with the highlights, and then really get into the game film from there.
So this is a little bit early. We're ahead of the draft. And some people might say, well, why is this important? Every year, there's about 4 rookie running backs that finish in the top 36. Now, why is that important? Top 36 running backs impact your team. Some of them are top 12. All right. In fact, I believe I read, I could be wrong, Dave will correct me if I am, that every running back the last 5 years that was selected in the first round has finished as an RB1 in fantasy. Every one. And guess what? We're going to have at least one in the first round this year. At least one. So
yeah. Actually, before we get into, because I'm really excited about the the individual player discussions that we're going to be having, but just in general, how is this particular running back class compared to last year's, which was thought of as being a pretty good one? And what do you see the strength of this running back class to, say, the wide receivers, which we've been hearing a lot of excitement about some of the wide receivers?
Yeah, we got spoiled last year. I mean, those running backs coming into the league were so good this year, nowhere near that. We luckily do have, the top end guy that I'm sure, you'd have to be living under a rock to not know about Jeremiah Love by now. Finished as, the one of the Heisman. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now. Yeah, he finished as a Heisman finalist, didn't win the award, but just a great player at Notre Dame. He's the guy that we're going to see almost assuredly go inside of round one. Once you get past that top guy, though, Jeremiah Love, every single guy has major flaws in his game, whether it's injury related, size related, athleticism related. So, as we're putting this whole process together, we're working with a very incomplete puzzle right now because we still have the NFL Combine coming up. After the NFL Combine, of course, the NFL Draft tells us a lot more. We're going to see where these players go, how much teams value them, what landing spots they're going to end up in. So right now we're doing our best to kind of get a basic idea and an understanding of every single one of these players. But we won't have those rankings finalized until after the NFL Draft.
Well, and to be fair, we've got free agency too coming up, and
Right.
free agency is going to impact where some of these players live. Now, just to be fully transparent, we're working from a list that Dave provided me, and already one of his top 15 players is now down close to 30. So, but we're still going to cover him tonight because Tipp had a question about him that we want to ask. But I want to start with Dave. What are you expecting from Fantasy Impact? Let's get Love. We'll talk about him later. But from some of these guys, third round draft pick, a day 3 draft pick, can still become a star in the NFL if he lands in the right situation. So, kind of make a reasonable fantasy impact. We want to look at your 3 deep sleepers who can make a reasonable fantasy impact. So give us your number 15 guy.
So the first guy that we'll talk about here, and you talk about it, like day 3 guys can make an impact. We saw it just last year. Camp Scadaboo was giving us RB1 production. Bayshall Tootin had his time to shine. Kyle Monungai ended up coming on strong at the end of the year. So we do see day 3 running backs. If there's one position that you want to bet on that's going to hit as a day 3 player, quarterbacks almost never happen. Wide receivers almost never happen. Tight ends, the running backs are the guys that can get drafted on day 3 and still be impactful. But there was one guy that I liked out of North Dakota State. His name's Barika Kapinu, and I was pretty excited watching him because he's got just good contact balance. He's got some breakaway speed as well. Unfortunately, though, he didn't get an invite to the NFL Combine, and that is basically a death knell for running backs. Now, I do want to say that there have been guys that have overcome this. Just last year, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was a guy that we ranked very high in version 1 of our football guys draft guide. Didn't get an invite to the Combine. We knocked him way down in the rankings, and we saw Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt ended up getting drafted, had himself a solid rookie season. So Barika Kapinu, he's fighting an uphill battle now without any chance to show up against his peers at the NFL Combine, but still just has some traits that I think are translatable.
Okay, before you analyze him, Dave, Tipp has a question about the dude.
Oh, well, no, yeah. No, Dave was getting right into it, but I have watched some film on Barika Pinu, and I got to say, I love the fact that he has a nose for the end zone, Dave. 20 touchdowns last year. It's music to my ears from a fantasy person, a fantasy analyst. I got to say, like, if there is a team out there that would take a chance on him, what type of team or who would that team that he could have an impact on in 2026?
San Francisco 49ers are the team that really jump out to me. He doesn't have a lot of lateral quickness. Like, he is a one-cut, get downhill runner. I compared him to Alexander Madison. He's just kind of got that hammer playing style. And when you look at the running backs that the San Francisco 49ers have typically gone after, they want those one-cut runners that can get out wide in his own scheme. So I think the 49ers would be good. I also like the Miami Dolphins prior to Mike McDaniel leaving. We don't know exactly what that offense is going to look like without him, but I think the 49ers are a team that we see regularly going to the well on day 3 and with these undrafted free agents and finding success there, like we just saw with Jordan Mason. We're hearing some good word about Jordan James now as well. So I think if there's one team that Kapinu really could end up being good with, it could be the San Francisco 49ers.
And Dave, how much of an impact does the school play in this? He didn't get the invite, but he's also from North Dakota State, which is not one of the big schools when it comes to especially running backs. You think that that's going to also lessen the chances that he makes it into this year's draft?
I think that plays a big part in it. And this North Dakota State team was weird. You know, they didn't play against a lot of good competition, but Cole Payton was a fun quarterback there this year. They had Bryce Lance, the little brother of Trey Lance, playing wide receiver, and then Barika Kapinu at running back. So even though they're a smaller school and didn't get battle tested against some better opponents, there's still some fun players here that, if given the opportunity, could end up potentially doing something at the next level.
91 carries, 1,000 yards. That's 10 yards a carry. All right. 10 yards a carry. I don't care what competition you're playing against. That's good. And 20
Absolutely.
touchdowns. You play to the competition you have. But we wanted to start with Noah. So tell us a little bit about Noah.
Yeah, Noah Whittington. He is an older guy out of Oregon. He's been around the league or been around in college for a little while now. Another undersized guy, but just a jitterbug out there when he gets in the open space. I really think the path for him at the NFL, just because of some of the size and age concerns, he's probably going to have to get on a roster as a special teamer. But we do see this often with guys who end up falling to day three, that if they can prove themselves on special teams, then the role could grow from there. So a fun player. The biggest red flags here are obviously size and age related.
Rick,
And-
you had a question.
Yeah, well, actually, he kind of answered it, but and I'll be honest, I play in Devy League, so I try to, I guess, find the potential diamond in the rough a little bit earlier in their college career. So I've been waiting for Nate Frazier of Georgia and Caden Durham of LSU, a big guy and a fast guy. But I would think that Oregon has had success with feeding the NFL the last couple of years. And so I'm guessing he would be a little bit more apt to get some draft consideration just from the fact that he's coming from the Oregon program.
Yeah, and we saw, LaMichael James nearly a decade ago didn't really live up to his draft stock. And since then, there's kind of been this idea around Oregon running backs, but we've seen plenty of other running backs since then come out and be productive. So yeah, like I said, size and age are the big red flags here, but I think this is a guy who will end up getting drafted probably round 6 or round 7. But what he does on special teams alone should help him find a role in the NFL.
Okay, well, the next guy I have a question about, and that's Jamari Taylor out of Virginia. Taylor was a kid. He's improved every year he's played, to be honest. And yeah, but it's a big jump to the NFL. Do you see him as a third down back or potentially every down back?
And, I love that you talk about that he improved every single year he was in. This kid was just written off after his high school career. He was a 0-star recruit. He had to start his collegiate journey in JUCO. And for me, that just shows resilience. And that's something that I want to see for these guys. We see it all the time. The 5-star recruit with the silver spoon in his mouth, and then he face plants in the NFL. Jabari Taylor, a 0-star recruit, carved his way on special teams in JUCO, and then eventually ended up leading a backfield at Virginia last year. So when I see that just steady improvement, it shows resilience. It shows moxie that I really want to pay attention to. Again, I think some of the concerns here, a little bit older. He's probably not going to test very well at the NFL Combine, but just such an easy player to root for because of his path through college.
Now, that sounds great. But, Rick, you have the next player, and we're getting into the top 12, which is important to us.
Robert Henry. And, first of all, love the fact that another Roadrunner is getting a mention, and the fact that one of the great names of football, Sincere McCormick, went to UTSA and wasn't drafted, but got into the Las Vegas Raiders a couple of years ago. What I understand about Robert Henry is he's explosive, especially between the tackles. But can you tell us a little bit more about this back? Again, a small school. Many people probably haven't heard of him.
Yeah, and this was another one coming out of college, didn't get a lot of recruiting buzz, which is pretty crazy. He rushed for over 7,000 yards and 99 touchdowns when he was in high school. And again, had to go through the small school at UTSA. What we do in our rookie guide, footballguys.com/rookie guide, if you want to check it out, it's 100% free. We've got a ton of information here, but we give a range of outcomes. And I gave Robert Henry one of the widest potential range of outcomes of any player here. His floor is that he's a practice squad player, and I gave him a ceiling as high as a Pro Bowl player. It's really tough trying to project these guys going from a small school to the NFL because that jump is huge. But he is a good athlete, just consistently ripping off big play after big play after big play. In each of his first 3 games last year, he had a rush of 74 or more yards in 3 consecutive games to start the season. So again, we have some questions about the competition level here, but my goodness, is he a playmaker? And I think that alone is going to help him get some buzz going into the NFL draft.
And you don't get 75 yards without having speed. But number 11 is Tipp's guy. Tip,
Yeah, Le'Veon Moss, and I love that name. Look, I love Le'Veon Bell from back in the day. I love Randy Moss. I even love Santana Moss. So those 2 names right there, just when you infuse those together, you get a guy in Moss, Dave, who has some juice. He's got some power. However, he has an upright running style, and that kind of makes me nervous. And then I go back and I look at some of his past information about his injury history, and that in of itself makes me nervous. So what is another hurdle that you think Moss was going to have to overcome going into the NFL?
The injuries are it. And you noted the injuries. I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to have to watch out for here. This is another player, like I talked about with Robert Henry, that I have a very vast range of outcomes for, because the upside for Le'Veon Moss is just so high. You talk about that upright running style, Tip, and I'm glad you talked about that, because when I do my player comps, I try to look at stylistic comps, like who does this guy look like? And when he's healthy, it's a lofty comp, and I hate to throw it out there, reminds me so much of Dalvin Cook. He is just a blazing runner, and he's kind of got that gliding ability. Doesn't have the most lateral quickness, but just his ability to bend without losing a step while still going full speed. So this guy has dealt with a ton of injuries, and that has really made him a pretty tough evaluation. But the upside here is so high. So again, Greg, I sent these rankings to you about a week and a half ago, I want to say. Since then, I'm constantly tweaking and moving things around. I've been steadily moving Le'Veon Moss up. I've got him right now actually as my RB8, and wouldn't surprise me if he ends up testing well at the combine, if he could even move higher than that.
And that's an excellent point, guys. We're doing this early for a couple reasons. One, to see how many players we can get in our hour. I'm going to ask Dave to come back on just before the draft with his final rankings and redo this. We may discuss different things, because once you've already given us your analysis, some of it will change, but most of it will be similar. But I want to thank Dave for coming early. And our next guy is Rick's guy.
No,
Desmond
actually,
Reed, I
that's you,
believe.
Greg.
I'm pretty sure that you have Damon Claiborne.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought
I thought Desmond Reed was up next.
Yeah, Desmond Reed was the running back next spring.
I've got him after Damon Claiborne. Sorry.
Well, we could talk about Damon Claiborne too. He's
Sure.
another fun player. I mean, we could talk about all of these guys. There's so much to discuss.
So, Rick, what's your question?
Well, and again, I used to ride with the wife of Nick Tabaka, who is the offensive line coach for Wake Forest. So I tend to look for and root for the Demon Deacons. He looks fast, agile, and creative, has good hands. So I really love this pick. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about him and where you might see him in a good fit on a team?
Yeah, he is a super twitched up player. When he gets the ball in his hands, he is just bouncing all over the place. He's a fun guy to watch for sure. I think some of the concerns here, a little bit undersized. He's not the best blocker. And he's one of those guys where, he was a 3-down back in college, but being undersized, it's tough at 5'9" to step into a 3-down role in the NFL. So the problem right now is that he's not a good blocker. And in order to be a 3rd down back in the NFL, you need to be a good blocker. So I think that he could potentially carve out a role as somebody who comes in strictly to run routes and catch the ball and get him in open space and allow him to create there. But this is a guy that I like quite a bit. Like, you watch his film, but I do have some questions about how his skill set and size is going to translate to the next level.
Well, you talk about size. My guy is tiny. I got Desmond Reed, 175 pounds. Now, I saw work done. All right. I saw work done pick up a blitzing linebacker that was flying, and Dunn stoned him. All right. Dunn was about 180 pounds. He wasn't a big guy either. And I actually, in the press conference, I asked, I think at the time his coach was Ditka. No, who wasn't. But I asked his coach, I recalled the play, and I said, does it surprise you that a guy that small can pick up a blitzer that big and that fast and do such a good job? And his answer was, nothing work done ever surprises me anymore. So I'm going to ask you about Reed. Can he be a work done type player, or is he more of a specialist punt returner guy?
I think that's going to be his path to getting into the NFL is through special teams. My player comp for him, this was one of the easiest ones that I had, was Tariq Cohen. Like when you watch him play, just such similar styles here. And Rick, I know you said that you played Devy, so you're probably familiar with Desmond Reed. In 2024, he had himself a huge year. He was 15th in the NCAA in all-purpose yards, but then he dealt with injuries all of the 2025 season. So we see this often where these guys have these early breakouts and then they get injured and people just kind of forget about them. So this is a guy that I have, after watching what he did in 2024, I'm holding on to a lot of excitement here. I do think he's a guy who needs to get schemed up some touches. You're not going to see Desmond Reed starting the game and getting to carry between the tackles on first down. But I think that just the big play upside, the pass catching abilities, what he can do on special teams, that's going to help him earn a role. And he's got the skill set that we want to see in fantasy football.
Yeah, but that number that I see, 175.
Is he a guy that you would take a late round flyer on in a fantasy league, or is he purely a Devy league type player?
I would take a late round flyer on him. And the NFL has changed so much, right? Like Desmond Reed, 175 pounds, probably wouldn't have even been on NFL radars if we're talking 10 years ago. But now, the way that we're spreading things out a little bit, we're creating and giving opportunities for guys to get in space and win one-on-one matchups. I do have faith in his ability to do that. He's not a guy who's ever going to have 300 carries in the NFL. He just doesn't have the build for that. But I think if you could just work him in every now and then, get him some touches here and there, the big play upside is what's alluring here.
Dave, you said something.
Guy.
You said something I want to go back and talk about. But before that, guys, if you're not subscribing, if you're not liking our channel, the Sports Affiliation, we've got shows like this on the Thursday Checkdown, shows like on Wednesday night with Carla, Game Changers, Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Oh no, time out, Tip. I heard that you have a new Wednesday night show coming. Is that going to be on the Sports Affiliation, or is it separate?
It's a space. It's separate right now. But yeah, I am going to start doing a space on March 11th will be our first show. It's with Nico Rossler and Natter. So yeah, tune out to that space. Keep looking out for it. But we're here to talk about the Sports Affiliation and how awesome this group is. And then also, since we have Dave Kluge on, and since Dave is with Football Guys, he talked about the rookie guide. Dave, can you just give people a brief 2-minute rundown, and then I'm going to ask my question about the rookie guide?
Yeah, footballguys.com/rookie guide. We put so much work into this. Tip, I know you see some of the behind the scenes stuff happening here, but before the season even ends, Jeff Bell, Mike Kashuba, and myself, we are diving into all of these incoming prospects. Version 1 came out the day after the Super Bowl. We had 157 rookies in there, and that's just quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We're only focused on the fantasy relevant positions here. We have scouting reports, we have player comps, we have strengths and weaknesses, we have ideal team fits, we have sortable stats, and then after the NFL Combine, we're going to add a relative athletic score. We're going to add everything, all of the measurements, all of the times that they run, and then of course we have version 3 after the NFL draft with more in-depth breakdowns. But the craziest thing is that this is completely free. I mean, we just use this as a way to get people on our website and look at some of the content that we do. So it doesn't cost a penny. You just go to footballguys.com/rookie guide, and you can get all of this in-depth information on 157 potentially incoming rookies.
And before Tip goes to his question, I've got to add, I've been around a long time. Joe Bryan is a personal friend. I've known him for 25 years, 30 years. And Sig and Cecil are good friends, and David Dodds is a good friend. These are guys that I grew up in the industry with. So you get over there, get into their forums. And that's what I told Tip when he went to work for them. I said, spend some time every day in the forums, get yourself known. And it's a tremendous. Now, I want to pitch our Discord, because we're trying to get to our Discord to where the forums are for Football Guys. Now, I know we're a long way from there, but we're trying to get there. And I know that Iggy has a link. It's a tiny URL link, and I think it's like TSA-Discord, but it's a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/TSA-Discord, I believe. Get there, join it. It's free. And community is where this thing's at, right, Dave?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, especially in this age where, it's really getting hard to differentiate what was written by a human and what was written by an AI chatbot. That I think the one thing we want to lean into more than anything else is just the personalities that we have here at Football Guys. You talk about Sig and Cecil. We've also got, just so many people here that are putting out good content.
I
and we
like
take a lot
Hutch.
of
You got
pride
the
in
kid. You
What
got
was
the
that?
kid. I like Hutch. I really
Yeah,
do.
Hutch is fantastic as well. Yeah, we've got a great staff over here, but more than anything, we do want to lean into that community aspect and connecting with our audience. We're lucky enough to have a very very big audience, and I know Joe takes a lot of pride in responding to every email. I take a lot of pride in responding to all of the DMs that I get as well. So we really want to connect with the audience because what we do wouldn't be possible without them.
All right. Sorry, Tipp. It's your turn.
No, we're preaching, man, and that's what it's about, man. It's about the community. But I do need to talk about Adam Randall. And ooh, Dave, I gotta say, this guy has some fluidity in his catches. And you have the Dolphins, you have the Falcons, the Steelers as teams that he could possibly be drafted to. But give us maybe one or two dark horse teams that could be looking his way because I really like him.
I think this guy can land just about anywhere if he has a creative coach that is willing to scheme up touches for him. Because right now, he isn't a pure running back. His entire college career was wild. He was drafted, he was a quarterback in high school, was recruited as a wide receiver, and did nothing for his first 2 years. Like, literally, was hardly on the field, couldn't catch any passes. And then all the running backs got hurt. And all of a sudden, Adam Randall was plugged in as an emergency running back in one of the final games of his sophomore campaign, and he flashed. So they made the decision the next year that they were going to convert him to running back. And this guy, of course, is one of the best pass-catching running backs in the entire class because of his history as a wide receiver. But he also has size. I mean, this guy is just massive, 230 pounds. 6'3". When he was at the Senior Bowl, he logged the second fastest time of any running back out there. So we're looking at a guy with size, speed, pass catching abilities. We don't know if he could play running back, and that's the big question. It's still new to him, and he's still developing in that facet of his game. But if this
How
guy
is his
can end
route
up
running?
fantastic,
Great route.
Because if his route running is good, he's got some wiggle. Because you don't make moves in a pass route without having a little bit of wiggle. Now, what you don't know, you watched the film. How is his vision? That's the question that running backs need to have at the next level. Not good? Can it develop?
Not great. And that's the hope, is that it can develop. Because like I said, this guy's only been playing running back for 2 years. So it's still new to him. So I think any coach that drafts him is going to have some patience. This isn't a guy that you're drafting and saying, congratulations, you're our week 1 starter. There is going to be some patience here. Now, funny enough, my comp for him was Cordero Patterson. Our Mike Kashuba was down in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl, and he asked Adam Randall, is there anybody that you kind of style your game after? And he said, Cordero Patterson. Now, if you remember Cordero Patterson in the NFL, he didn't do much of anything on offense.
Yeah, he was everything.
Yeah, he was a kick returner. He was a punt returner. He didn't break out as a running back until year 9 with Arthur Smith, because Arthur Smith wanted this sort of creative usage. So Adam Randall, I think he needs that sort of coach, somebody who sees the vision, because you could put him in line, you could put him out wide, you could put him in the slot, you could put him in the backfield, you could put him at wildcat quarterback. This guy is an athlete. He is big, he is fast, he is strong. If a coach is out there willing to tailor some touches to go his way, the ceiling is sky high with Adam Randall.
Yeah, and Adam Randall being with Clemson, who had 3 great wide receivers and a pretty good quarterback too, to be able to get on the field, and especially in that wide out position, he had to be doing something right. So
absolutely.
And Rick, you got the next player from Washington.
Yeah, Jonah Coleman. And I know, or at least I've read, that there were people questioning his speed. I think he only had like a 4.5 as a 40, but 15 touchdowns. So you got to think that he's just getting it done on the field. What round do you think that he might go in the NFL? And do you think he's going to, or what round do you think he might get drafted in rookie drafts in fantasy football?
So aside from Jeremiah Love, every single player that we're going to talk about from here on out, they are just razor thin in my rankings. It is so hard to differentiate between these guys because they all have high ceilings and they all have kind of scary floors. So again, we've got the combine next weekend. That's when we're going to get the questions. answered that we have about Jonah Coleman. Now, I don't think a 40 is all that important because the reality is it's very rare that a running back is getting an opportunity to run 40 yards in a straight line. But, doing some of the agility drills, is he able to log a good time in the shuttle drill? Does he weigh what we expect him to? Those are the questions that I'm going to have. And when I'm looking at what running backs do at the combine, the shuttle drill, their 10-yard split, that piques my interest much more than the 40-yard dash does. So Jonah Coleman, he's got some wiggle, and you can see him when he gets in the tight areas of the field. He's able to bounce from side to side pretty quickly, but it's that top speed that's really capped here. I think Jonah Coleman, if he's able to answer some of the question marks about his speed, the ceiling here is a Doug Martin type of player. He's just a bowling ball. He can run through players. But I think the concern, of course, is those big breakaway runs that he had at Washington. Are those translatable to the NFL? And I wish I could say yes or no, but I just don't know yet.
Yeah, and 30 receptions, 31 here.
Yep.
That's pretty good for a college player, is it not, for a running back?
It is, yeah. And I mean, this guy was a true 3-down back, and that's why the comp for Doug Martin, he's got that same, short stature and a really thick build. And I think when you see a guy like that, you just assume that they are nothing but an early down plotter, but he was used on all 3 downs. He is a pretty fluid route runner. He catches the ball away from his body. So an underrated skill set as a pass catcher as well. But if he comes out here in Indy and runs a 4.7, which is definitely within the range of outcomes, then all of a sudden he's fallen around 6 or 7 in the NFL draft.
Yeah, but he's still drafted. That gives him a chance to play. And some people do better in actual field play than they do in the exercise of the combine or the workouts and things like that.
Absolutely.
The guy I got to talk about, and I hate mentioning his name because I'm a huge Barry Sanders fan, and my nemesis was Emmitt Smith. But Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska, he's a pretty darn good running back too. He seems to be one of the most consistent backs on your list. But my Wolverines did shut him down. I gotta throw that out there. When I looked at his game by game, he was very good and very consistent, except for against Michigan. Now, I don't think Michigan had that great of a defense last year. We had good linebackers, we had good defensive linemen, but they never put the whole thing together last year. What were we, 7-4 or something? We just weren't that great. What do you see from this guy? I mean, was it just a game situation that kept him down because Michigan got a lead and they had to throw?
I didn't watch that game specifically, so I can't give you insight into that one. But just on a whole, I mean, this guy was a true workhorse. He was 3rd in the NFL in receiving yards, 3rd in the NCAA in receiving yards and 4th in rushing yards. This guy just didn't come off the field, and he could do it all, whether it was, short down and distance, 3rd downs, he was always out there. So a big stat compiler, but it is a little bit concerning that he's just about 200 pounds. I mean, and he might not have.
Timeout. Yeah. Curtis Martin, Barry Sanders. All right. I can name you probably 6 running backs that were less than 210 and about 5'9", 5'8" to 5'10", and 205.
Jameer Gibbs. Jameer Gibbs is another one that comes to mind.
Well, but
all of those guys, Greg, had game-breaking speed. And I don't know if
Barry really didn't. He really didn't have game-breaking speed. He just jitterbugged. He was very quick. He just didn't have the straight line speed.
And I worry that Emmitt Johnson just doesn't have that same skill set. He doesn't have that lateral quickness, the Barry Sanders, Jameer Gibbs.
But he's got to have the vision if he's getting that kind of yards in the Big Ten, doesn't he?
He does. He has very good vision. He is a very decisive runner. When he sees a hole, he is going to explode through it. So my comp for him was another guy who I don't think had the craziest wiggle, didn't have the craziest long speed, was a little bit undersized, but still found a successful pass in the NFL. And it was Ahmad Bradshaw. And I think that there's a lot of Ahmad Bradshaw in Emmitt Johnson's game. And we know he's a guy who, he was fast, but he wasn't Jameer Gibbs fast, but, just being decisive, having the good contact balance, it kept him around in the league for a long time. And I could see Emmitt Johnson following a similar path.
Do you see him as a one-cut back? And if so, what offensive system lends itself to one cut and go type running game?
Again, San Francisco, which I mentioned, anything that's kind of under that Shanahanian tree, but the Minnesota Vikings were the one that jumped out to me. This is, I think right now they're looking for somebody to complement Jordan Mason, who's still under contract next year. Aaron Jones is going to be gone. So I think when you have Jordan Mason, who is also kind of a one cut, get downhill quickly type of runner, well, he's a little bit bigger. I think that you can just alternate drives between the two of them, and some of the hammering ability that you might lose with Jordan Mason, you can make up for with some of the potential big play outcomes with Emmett Johnson. But of course, we're going to answer these questions, like I am saying about a lot of these guys in RB2 through RB7. We're going to get more answers about his long speed and the lateral quickness at the combine next week.
Yeah, and I hate to do this to you because I didn't prepare you for this. We know that after free agency, we're going to know a little bit more as well before the draft. Where do you see Breece Hall ending up? Because to me, he's the biggest wild card in the free agent running backs.
Unfortunately, it looks like he's going back to New York. That's what the most.
Why would he do that?
Franchise.
They're going to have a chance. They're going to slap with the franchise tag. Yeah, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. No choice.
Yeah, so as a Bears fan, nothing would make me happier. They got team-friendly out with DeAndre Swift. Get DeAndre Swift out of town, bring in Breece Hall. That's what I want to see. But it does sound, unfortunately, like we're going to see another year of.
You're a Bears.
Wait, the Indiana Bears, Dave?
You're a Bears fan.
The Hammond Bears.
Yeah.
The Hammond Bears.
I do well, and I got to say, Swift, I was a big doubter early in his career.
I don't like him. I think he's soft. Because he played with the Lions. I think he's soft. I actually like Monangai better than I do Swift.
Nice.
I will say this year, though, we did see a little bit more decisiveness from Swift. He's been a guy that
Yes,
I've
you
knocked
did.
for his softness his entire career. Changed it up this year, and I don't know if you watch Hard Knocks, but there was a scene a few years back when Detroit Lions were there where Deuce Staley, the running back coach, was just laying into DeAndre Swift for not finishing his runs.
Yes.
And I like to hope that still is in the back of his mind, because now he does finish his runs and he gets downhill a little bit quicker.
Well,
but I still will not forget his first goal line touch
Yeah.
last year was an 11-yard loss. I mean, just
He's always
dancing
had
around.
good wiggle and good speed and excellent quickness.
Yep.
For those that don't know, speed and quickness are two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's had decent vision. He always has, but he doesn't run through tackles. And I don't think he did last year all that much either. I just don't think he's strong enough, to be honest.
And honestly, when you talk about the difference between quickness and speed, I think that's perfect.
Yeah,
We
go
were just
ahead.
talking about Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson, probably not fast, but he is definitely quick.
Okay, so he can do things then, right?
Yep.
Where do you want to see him go? Do you want to see him be a Bear?
If he's got the speed, because I think right now with Monangai, we know what Monangai is. Monangai is a very powerful.
You want to
back. He
compliment
doesn't have the top
Monangai.
end. Exactly. And you look at how Ben Johnson has always built his backfields. We had DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, and then we had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And right now, Kyle Monangai fits into that Jamal Williams, David Montgomery archetype. So what we need is the DeAndre Swift, maybe a younger version of DeAndre Swift, or the Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's why Breece Hall, I think, would be a great fit. And there are some other rookies. That I
How
think
did your Bears let Montgomery go? He was so good in Chicago. He really was.
Yeah, I think he just overstayed his welcome here. No fault of his own, but he was just a part of bad offenses. And I think that because of the losing record, I think that, he wanted to change his scenery. I think the Bears kind of wanted to let him go. And I was happy for him because he never was able to run behind a good offensive line. He was constantly breaking 6 tackles just to get back to the line of scrimmage. So to see him land in Detroit behind a good offensive line and see him become the player that we hoped he could be, nothing but happy for him.
And it looks like they're going to re-sign him too. It looks like Detroit is going to keep him. It looks like
I've heard different. I think he said that he wants out. He is not happy.
Oh, he said he wants out?
Yeah, at the
I
end of
didn't
the
hear
year,
that. Okay.
when Dan Campbell took over as the play caller, they started leaning on Jahmyr Gibbs a lot more, and rumors are that Montgomery wasn't very happy with that.
All right. Well, Rick's got a Razorback next.
Yeah, and anytime the words big, strong, fast, decent hands, good blocker, boy, that guy sounds like someone I want on my team. What are your thoughts on Mike Washington?
He's been a massive riser for me. I've got him right now as my RB3 in the class. just the more I watch, the more I like. And so often we kind of go into the draft process with preconceived notions. Like, I knew Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen before I started watching them. Mike Washington wasn't a guy that I was super familiar with. And as soon as I watched him, again, I talk about it every once in a while, there's those players where it's just like the player comp slaps you in the face. And Matt Forte is what I saw with Mike Washington, just this big, muscular, upright runner with broad shoulders. But what I think Matt Forte did so well in the open field is he knew when to absorb contact and when to just bend around it. And Mike Washington does that. When you're one-on-one with Washington in the open field, this guy's about 230 pounds. He can run through you. So a lot of times these defenders are bracing for impact, and then he will just kind of sidestep around and just keep downfield without losing his step. So this is the guy, I talked about Adam Randall being the second fastest guy at the Senior Bowl. Mike Washington was the fastest, and he did that at 6 foot, 228 pounds. So another big, strong guy, very underrated pass catcher as well.
How
They would
fast
just
was he?
spam. I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was right around 20 miles an hour, and I don't have it
Well,
off
was
the
it
top of my
sub
head.
4.4?
So what they do in the Senior Bowl is they have the chips in the shoulder pads. So they'll give you the miles per hour, but they don't actually run the 40 time. But we'll get that answer next week. And my guess is that he comes out there. If he runs a faster 40 time than anybody out there, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. But he's got the power, he's got the finesse, he's got the speed, the quickness, everything you want to see, but also a very underrated pass catcher as well. Taylon Green at Arkansas was a very inconsistent quarterback, but when he'd put it on him, Mike Washington was regularly catching the ball deep downfield. He can run routes. He's got soft hands. This is a guy that the more I watch, the more I just get warmer and warmer on him. And our Jeff Bell, who does a huge part of this rookie guide as well. He actually has Mike Washington as his RB2 in this class behind Jeremiah Love. Just the upside is so high with Mike Washington.
He had 147 against A&M, and again, he's running in the SEC. He's doing it, and
see now
I'm looking forward to seeing him in the NFL.
My number 2 is the guy Tipp's going to ask you about next out of Penn State.
Yeah. Nicholas Singleton, and damn, dude squat 665 pounds, guys. That was, I think it was some sort of record. But Dave, I got a 2-part question for you. I know you like to hit the weights too. I remember we were at the Football Guys retreat, and I caught you in the gym. And so, what's your max squat, bro?
I try not to go over 315 these days just because it hurts my back. But I was just at the gym right before we recorded this, and I was doing a 520 on the hack squat.
Hey, look at you, man. Oh my God. Okay, I do have a serious question though. You talk about you talk about in the article, or excuse me, in the rookie guide, a lot of these players are having contact balance. We just talked about Emmett Johnson. We just talked about or we're going to talk about Katron Allen as well. Like talk about how important contact balance has become. You think of players like Alvin Kamara, you think of players like Bijan Robinson. These guys seem to never fall. Even when they get tripped up, they seem to find their way. So talk a little bit about how important contact balance has become for these running backs.
Well, it's an innate skill. I don't think you can learn contact balance. It's one of those things that you just have from the time that you're a little kid playing around in the playground. And like that's what separates, good athletes from elite athletes. You could spend all the time you want in the gym, getting stronger and getting faster, but that contact balance, it's just something that you're born with. It's like you've got this gyroscope in your head that either works or it doesn't. And Nick Singleton definitely has that contact balance, as do most of the guys that are inside my top 10, because that's what makes them good players. Now, Nick Singleton is a Devy darling. And I know, Rick, you said that you have played Devy. You are very familiar with Nick Singleton, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. In fact, he was, I think, thought more highly last year than this year, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of the fear here is this guy was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He was one of the top running backs in the nation and looked really good through his first couple of years. Leaves Penn State as their all-time leading rushing scorer. But there's 2 things that I can't help but ignore. One, we saw last year, Drew Aller went down with that injury, and it just really screwed up the entire Penn State offense. So when defenses knew there wasn't as much of a threat of a passing attack, they started loading the box, 8, 9 players in the box on almost every single play. And the Penn State coaching staff decided to lean on Katron Allen, who had his most productive and most efficient season. So when things were going good in Penn State and they were scoring and they were able to get him out in space, he was able to make these big plays. But when things kind of caved in and he was forced to face loaded boxes, we saw him not getting as many touches and being less efficient with them. The other red flag here is that he broke his foot at the Senior Bowl. Now, that doesn't mean that, he can't recover from a broken foot, but given the time of the injury, Nick Singleton potentially isn't going to be ready for training camp. And we see it all the time. Rookies missing training camp is so hard to overcome. Even Jackson Smith-Njigba, who we know one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, he had that broken wrist throughout his rookie training camp and didn't do much his rookie season. So I think if you're drafting Nick Singleton, you have to be okay looking at 2026 as a potential zero. Now, there's a lot to like about him long-term, but the broken foot, the fall off in efficiency last year, those are things that I don't hear a lot of people talking about that raise some concerns for me.
So Greg mentioned the squat record, and whose record did he break, Greg?
I don't know.
Oh, no.
Saquon.
Yeah.
Saquon.
He broke Saquon Barkley's squat
665.
record and his rushing touchdown record.
And broke his rushing record. That's right.
I just love his game. I think Nick Singleton has as much potential in this draft as any running back, and that includes Jeremiah Love. I just got to say, I think Singleton's the real deal, and we'll see at the next level. He split carries this year, and so did my next guy. My next guy played at Notre Dame, and I don't know where you got him now, but you had him at number 3. You had 2 Notre Dame running backs at 1 and 3 in this draft at one point. Jadarian Price, yeah, he didn't get a ton of carries. He didn't catch the ball a lot, but he was an outstanding kick returner. And you know as well as I do, if you can return kicks in the NFL, you're going to get on the roster. And if you get on the roster, you're going to have a chance. So I'm guessing that you ranked him high, a lot of the reason because of his kick return abilities. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. And that's going to get him drafted 100%. But I think that he's more than that. My player comp for him, I was torn between 2 guys, and one of them just frankly felt disrespectful. Leon Washington was the first guy that I thought of when I watched Darian Price. And I think Leon Washington was just a guy who was ahead of his time. Had he been coming into the NFL today, I think he probably would have been a round 2 pick. But at that point when he was drafted, teams were really scared off by undersized guys, but he had the speed, and he was one of the best kick returners that we've seen over the last couple of decades. And that's what Jadarian Price does well. Now, I think Jadarian Price, much better contact balance. He's better at running through contact. He can do some of the things that he can't. So I settled on CJ Spiller just because Jadarian Price was a track star in high school, and that shows up when you watch him on film. I mean, if you give him just a sliver of daylight, he's taking that ball to the end zone. So the big play upside here is what's so alluring. And I know the big knock is that he was unable to take over the backfield at Notre Dame. Guess what? There wasn't a single running back in the NCAA last year that was going to take away touches from Jeremiah Love.
Well, but 6 catches, that's going to be a bit concerning, doesn't it?
Yes and no. Notre Dame just didn't throw the ball that much. And when they did, it was, to Malachi Field. So this was just such a low volume passing attack. They wanted to keep the ball on the ground. Their quarterback rushes the ball. They're splitting touches with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So I think when you look at the overall pass catching output, you just have to put a big asterisk next to it and just say, this was just, a product of the Navy offense. I think that he's a much better route runner and pass catcher than his stats from Notre Dame would imply.
Well, that's good to know. But Tip's going to ask about the number 2 back in Penn State.
The other Penn State guy is Katron Allen. Okay, so we got 2 Penn State guys. That's pretty cool to have, right?
Yeah, my top 4 is 2 Penn State and 2 Notre Dame guys. I mean, they know how to recruit them.
They do.
Well, and just so you know, again, Singleton is my number 2 overall. Mm-hmm. Am I way off in that?
Not at all. And I tweeted this a couple of days ago, and some people might not understand, so I can give some more nuance to it now. But I said the gap between RB1 and RB2 is bigger than the gap between RB2 and RB7. So all of these guys that we've been talking about recently, Jonah Coleman, Emmett Johnson, Mike Washington Jr., Nick Singleton, Jadarian Price, Katron Allen, any of them could be RB2 in your rankings. Any of them could be RB7. I find myself constantly tweaking and moving these guys around when I find out new information or see something on film that I like or dislike. Right now, the margins between these guys are razor thin. And, I don't ever want anyone to do poorly, but I'm kind of hoping that some of these guys just like don't do well at the combine so I could just bump them down my rankings and not have to deal with this headache of a cluster anymore.
Will either of these Penn State guys have a Miles Sanders type year, which to me, minus 2022, means kind of a bust?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. We see it all the time. Guys are drafted high, come into the league, don't do much of anything at all. Sony Michel was a first-round draft pick who, aside from one postseason run, didn't do much of anything throughout his career. But what I like about Kaytron Allen, I kind of alluded to already a little bit when I was talking about Nick Singleton. Last year when the what hit the fan in Penn State, they had to lean on Kaytron Allen because he is better suited for running against loaded boxes, and he stepped up when they needed him to. He had his most rushing yards of his career, but also the most efficiency of his career. So that to me is just like mind-blowing. I mean, this guy averaged 6.2 yards per carry when everybody in the stands and on the field and on the benches knew that he was going to be getting the ball. 6.2 yards per carry going up against loaded boxes is just very, very impressive. Now, I'm totally willing to be wrong on Kaytron Allen. I've got him as my RB2 right now, but if he comes out and doesn't test well, we obviously can't ignore that. He already showed up to the Senior Bowl 10 pounds less than his listed weight at Penn State. That was red flag number one. We did get some decent mile per hour data from the Senior Bowl. He was running a little bit above 18 miles per hour, which is more than enough juice to succeed at the NFL level. But, when looking at some of these other guys, Jadarian Price, we talked about Emmett Johnson and Jonah Coleman to answer these questions. I think if Jadarian Price, Mike Washington, Emmett Johnson, Jonah Coleman, they all show out at the NFL Combine, and Kaytron Allen doesn't, he can move from RB2 all the way down to RB7 in my rankings. And while that might feel very drastic, it's so tight between that tier that it's not as drastic as the numbers would make you feel.
Okay, so I stole Tip's question. So, Tip, why don't you take the RB1 question?
Oh, Jeremiah Love. Yeah. So Jeremiah Love is widely considered the best running back in college right now. And he's dominated the touches in Notre Dame. But Price was clearly viewed as a home run hitter, or excuse me, clearly viewed as a home run hitter. Do you think he could succeed the rookies in this league this year, Jeremiah Love?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be, when I look at the NFL draft this year, and I'm getting way ahead of myself because we still have to see how the combine shakes out, but we saw how the 2025 NFL season shook out. Like everything we thought was going to happen in the preseason got flipped on its head. The Seahawks won the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs were out of the playoffs. It was just a wild year. So when you look this pocket before pick 15, like the top half of round one, where you've got the Washington Commanders, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals, you got the Kansas City Chiefs, you've got the Dallas Cowboys, 4 good offenses that are in need of a running back. So for me, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but if Jeremiah Love lands with one of those offenses, it's going to be hard to keep him outside of my top 5 running backs in 2026 redraft rankings. I think this guy is good enough that he is going to have skills that immediately translate to the NFL. And, all of these guys that we've talked about in RB2 through RB7, I've talked about my concerns. I don't really have any concerns with Jeremiah Love. He's got the long speed. He can catch passes. He's got contact balance. When he needs to lower his shoulder and run through a defender, he can do that. We saw that touchdown against Penn State that went viral where he broke like 4 tackles inside the 2-yard line on his way to a touchdown. But he's also got juking ability where he can just leave defenders grasping for air. By the time they realize what happened, he's already 15 yards behind him. This guy is just a supreme talent. I don't really have any questions here. I think he's going to get drafted highly in the first round, and I think he's going to be an immediate contributor in the NFL.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I believe that every running back drafted the last 5 years in the first round has finished as an RB1 as a rookie.
I think it's 10 years. I think you can go all the way back to Ezekiel Elliott. Yep.
Well, let's go with Genty, Bijan, Jameer, and now Jeremiah Love, because we know he's going in the first round. Where do you rank those 4?
I have Ginty I have Gibbs and Bijan ahead right now. I mean, it's really hard not to. But I do have Jeremiah Love right now ahead of Ashton Ginty, and they're in their own little mini tier with Devon Achane right behind them. So I've got Jeremiah Love right now slotted in as my RB3 in Dynasty, but in the same tier as Ashton Ginty and Devon Achane.
That's Dynasty. What about redraft?
In redraft, I got to be honest, I can't even plant that flag without knowing a landing spot, because then we have to start looking at yearly projections. I feel pretty comfortable projecting years and years and years out for a player this talented, but without knowing where he's going to be playing. I mean, what if he does get drafted to the Lions and he's split
Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, like there are potential, and we do see this where guys land in places that we don't want. So if he lands with one of those 4 teams that I mentioned, the Bengals, the Commanders, the Cowboys, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on the other one that I mentioned.
Do you think Love could end up in Dallas?
I think he could. And
He'll
if he
drop
does,
that part. Where's Dallas drafting?
I think they're drafting 14th.
That's kind of a long way for him to drop, isn't it?
And we never really know with running backs. It does seem like the NFL is starting to value running backs a little bit more than they did, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But yeah, Dallas is picking 12. So not totally crazy to think that he could fall there. But again, looking at some of those spots, Cleveland right now, I don't think they would at 6, but if you draft Jeremiah Love and then you put him in a backfield with Quinshon Judkins, that's a nightmare for projecting. Like, we expect Love to get the majority of the touches, but Judkins isn't coming off of the field. We've also got the New Orleans Saints, where Alvin Kamara is still under contract. We saw some good stuff for Devin Neal. They might draft Jeremiah Love to be the heir apparent from Alvin Kamara, but that means that he's splitting touches this year. So that's why it's so hard to say where I'd rank him in 2026 fantasy football leagues. But long term, we know talent wins out. So I have a lot of faith in him in Dynasty, but can't really plant a flag on redraft until I see where he's going to be playing.
Rick, did you have a question? I saw you raising your finger a little bit.
No, actually, I didn't raise my finger, but one of the things that I mentioned early at the start of the show, I was like, I had already planted flags on Nate Frazier and Cade Durham as being almost like, if I could get them on the same team, they would be what do they call it, thunder and lightning type running backs. Are you also playing, Debbie? And do you look at the 27 draft, and are you already looking at? But I know the wide receivers. The top 2 picks are wide receivers in 27. But
so everyone has their own process. I don't play Debbie. I think, and I'm not saying this about you specifically, Rick, but I have seen a lot of people hold on to priors way longer than they should in Debbie, because that guy has like that freshman year breakout and then does nothing for the next 3 years, but people are still holding on to hope because of what he did years ago. So I don't want to say that any way is the right way or the wrong way to do it, but I really do like kind of not watching a lot of college football during the season, and then during the NFL playoffs, that's when I start diving into the player film. And I feel like I'm able to look at these players with a blank canvas, and I don't really have a lot of preconceived notions about them. So that's how I do it. And also, just trying to preserve my marriage here with how much time I'm putting into the NFL. If I start putting that much time into college as well, things can get hairy in the Kluge house.
I got to watch Michigan. Sorry. I just have to. Tip, did you have a final question for?
No, I did not.
Well, I do, because I know that your rankings have changed since you sent me the list. Are there 1 or 2 players, because we got 3 minutes left, are there 1 or 2 players that we didn't mention tonight that have moved up your list that you want to mention?
That's a good question. I'm flipping over to my rankings right now. Jamarian Miller is a guy that I'm not truthfully crazy about, but he did get invited to the combine and has the speed we want to see. He's a little bit smaller, 5'10", but 221 pounds. Comped him to Zach Moss, just a very vision-based, decisive runner. Do worry a little bit about the top end talent, but he's a guy worth watching. And then the other guy I'll mention is Seth McGowan. And this guy is just the old man of this year's draft. I mean, he's going to be 25 when he gets drafted, which is ancient in running back terms. And he had a very weird path through college, got suspended and relieved from his school for some legal issues, and then ended up getting some extra years of eligibility because of that. So he's coming into the NFL very, very old, which concerns me a little bit as far as dynasty, but he is a very talented running back. And I think that if he gets drafted to a place with an opportunity where he can immediately see the field, he's a name worth knowing.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to say about your work? Where can people, I know the rookie guide, but what else are you doing? Tell us about your podcasting.
Yes, very, very busy with podcasting. Right now, we're taking a break from the fantasy football show as it is dynasty season, leaning 100% on the dynasty content. But we'll be back with the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show in just a couple of weeks here. I'll be doing 5 shows a week over there with nonstop guests coming in from Football Guys staff and some of our friends from outside the company as well. So now you can find me on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I've got the Football Guys Dynasty Show as well. I also have my solo show, The Launchpad, and then, of course, all the writing, rankings, all that good stuff over at footballguys.com.
I saw our next week's guest is Dr. Kevin Murray. I saw an interview Kevin did with you 2 years ago, 2023.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember it?
I do,
great
yeah.
interview. Yeah,
Kevin's a great guy, yeah, and I love those shows too. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love talking football. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love talking football. But what Kevin Murray does, and then we've also got other people out here that are just doing things, getting to know the analysts a little bit. It's fun to just like not have to prep for a show, not have to talk about football, just take off my analyst hat, talk a little bit about real life stuff. I remember with Kevin, we talked about some mental health struggles, really got deep into that show, talking about life as well. So yeah, Kevin's a great guy, and I love that he has that platform to do that type of show.
Yeah, he is a great guy. And like I said, he's going to be on next week to talk about last year's season-ending injuries. Now, he's a real doctor. He's a chiropractor, but he's a real doctor. He's had the education, and he's going to tell us what he expects from the players next year that had season-ending injuries this year. So be sure to tune in for that. But I also want to thank Iggy and Rick, because I assume Rick was putting up a lot of our slides, because I think Iggy disappeared for a little while, our normal producer, because we have technical difficulties all the time. But I want to appreciate Rick doing the background work and Iggy doing the background work, and providing those slides with the information so that when Dave talked about players that you might not know, at least you know what they did their their last year in college. So thank you, Dave, very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Iggy, take us out, baby.